Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. Let's join Johnny Branham, Elmo Golden, and Willie Goldsby, the man Elmo wounded in a gunfight over 30 years ago, in the episode entitled The Fix Is In.
Welcome to Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. To my left, I have Mr. Elmo Golden, and to my right, we have our special guest, Mr. Willie Goldsby. And we were talking about unintended consequences. And when you think about unintended consequences, what comes to mind is a ripple effect. But how far does that ripple effect go?
Right. Well, I know that earlier we talked about the way that we met, which we is 35 years ago, because of my pride, and I didn't want to walk away with this guy without this guy paying me my $2. It's crazy now. It's shameful, really, to have to sit here and say that I did humanize another human being based on 8 quarters. It's something to really think about, and how far a mind can go to where they're actually saying that, nobody's worth anything because of my heartache and the way that I feel now, and nobody understands me, so literally forget everybody. We talked about the incident with my mom and stuff, and we talked about the isolated incident with your dad. There were 2 more incidents that happened along this time. I was standing outside. I hadn't been arrested yet. I was standing outside, and I noticed that a car pulled up next door to my house. And the house that I lived in, it was a building called the Little Red Schoolhouse. And the young lady got out, and she had 2 kids with her, and she was taking the kids into the nursery. And I later found out that those were your kids, and that this lady, she couldn't drop those kids off because she recognized who I was. And we're still talking about the unintended consequences, because now I'm affecting the way that this lady moves, her job. She can't leave the kids there. Now she's got to find somebody else to take care of her kids, because she feels as though I'm standing out there, I'm a threat. And now I know where her kids are at. I mean, the mind, no matter what I was thinking, in her mind, this thing hasn't ended yet. And now she's feeling that I can't drop my kids off because this young man is going to literally hurt my kids or hurt me. Remember now, his dad had to sit home and get the phone call and said that, hey, your son's in the hospital. He may be near death. He just got shot. Your son is in the hospital. He's near death. He just got shot. So how do you think that if someone calls and say, hey, listen, your son is critical condition, he's lost a lot of blood, and then you finally are confronted with that same person? And so I had never thought about anybody else's family as long as I satisfied my own needs. I had never thought about this young lady and her bringing, I'm causing money, her losing money, her having to go through other things to drop the kids off. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about the effects that what I did had on my mama, and how she thought about me and her own safety. I went back to prison again at the age of 33. I had did that 5-year bid. I got out, and I know now at age 33 that I got to grow up. I got to fix some of this stuff. It was during this time then that God had got a hold of me.
Okay, because I was going to ask you what the light clicked on when you said at 33.
Yeah, and it wasn't something miraculous. It was just a quick breaking pop.
Okay,
stop doing what you're doing. Stop it.
Yes.
And I went through the process. I went through the submission of having men minister to my heart, the part where what was really touching for me was the forgiveness. I had to reach out to these people and start telling them that I'm sorry, telling them, asking them to forgive me. And this is why this journey continues on. I sought after God, and I ended up in a faith and character-based program at South Bay Correctional Institution. I was given the charge of teaching a class called Victim Impact. This class opens up the doors and gives you an idea of just how much you affect other people's lives because of your crime.
For the benefit of the people who would probably were like, what's a faith and based character? Just briefly describe, because I know it's different from the rest of the prison. It's not the same. It's the actual different type setting. Explain a little bit of what that looks like.
Well, briefly, it's a program that where guys get together and you have to go through a process of getting into this program. You don't just get into it. It's based on your behavior. It's based on what the officers and your classification supervisor sees, your case manager, and then they ask you, do you want to start? Do you want to actually go into this program? And I accepted the invitation. The invitation it taught man search for meaning. It gave us ideas of creating our own stories, learning how to speak in public. I mean, it was just a gamut of programs that were there to help us enrich our lives and enrich the lives of other people. So now I'm in this program and I'm teaching Victim Impact. And I'm learning now that that there has to be some kind of reconciliation with myself and the people that I offended or harmed, if it's possible. And so that had always been at the forefront of my mind. And I actually forgot about everything else that I had did, because I said, I forgave myself and I'm going to move on. Until one day I was sitting in the program and this guy comes in who had been in the program probably a month. And I found out that him and I lived in the same neighborhood too. We were from Fort Lauderdale. And he asked me one day, he said, do you know Willie Goldsby? I said, yeah, I know him. He said, yeah, because we was talking about the restaurant that him and I used to work at along with his dad. And I didn't say anything after that because I'm thinking about, okay, this man will put a hit on me 30 years ago. Here it is. I got a hit on me already. Now I'm sitting here. Now this is doing, 30 years later, I'm like sitting there and we playing Scrabble, and I'm pretty good at Scrabble. I kicked this guy's butt. And we playing, and he asked me, he said, how do you know him? And I said, yeah, I know him. We was at the Betty's restaurant together. He said, oh. He said, this is exact words. He said, I thought he tried to take your girlfriend, right? Because apparently he was a playboy when he was younger. And that's the first thing that he said about Willie was that because he'll steal your girlfriend.
Oh, man.
Wow. And so I said, nah. For some reason, I blurted out, I shot him. And to see the expression in this guy's face, it kind of shocked me because he looked at me and he said, you did that? Now, I didn't know that Willie went to this guy's house after I shot him to get more bullets. I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were friends.
Mm.
And so now, automatically, here it is. It sets in now. Okay, now this is somebody else. Now I gotta deal with. Do I have to fight this guy now too? And he told me, he confirmed. He said, yeah, man. He said Willie came to the house, man, and I wouldn't give him bullets. I wouldn't give him a gun. And I'm sitting there later on in my room. I said, you gotta isolate it. This incident happened 30 years ago, and it's still following me. And I'm changing my life. I'm in God's hands now. I'm letting him reshape me, remold me. I'm doing what I think is right in the eyesight of not only God, but in the eyesight of my peers too. And then the words fix it came. Fix it. Now remember, we talking about all these, you started off just trying to satisfy your own pleasures, your own selfish needs, and here it is, you've affected hundreds of people's lives with one isolated incident that was so petty, it started off with $2. And so I began to work on that. I began to call my mom, call the people that I affect, everybody that I could. As a matter of fact, when I got out of prison, 2 months ago, I went back to the restaurant to find his father. I asked the owner of the restaurant, Miss Betty, I said, Miss Betty, where's Reb? And that's when she told me he had passed away. He passed away. And the thought of I didn't have a chance to fix it, it broke me down. I still had another chance. So I looked for Willie. With some kind of way, we became Facebook friends. And now today, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it today. I'm going to fix it. So we got to learn how to forgive one another so we can move on.
Yes.
Got to learn this. I'm telling the men and women that are listening, if you have the opportunity to fix it, don't wait till it's too late, because you'll never have an opportunity to see these people again.
Yes.
And I feel, it's not that I feel so much better, but I know that this program, this podcast is a vehicle that allows us to get it right.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I think the young man is reaching out to clear all the spider webs, clear his conscience, to make it right, for whatever he did in the past, anybody he harmed, he just want to make it right, and that's his way. And then, like he said, unfortunately, my father passed. So I guess that's a void, that's something he got to live with, because he wasn't able to get, to get it right with him, But somehow, like you said, it's just so weird how God working in this whole thing. I'm not a big Facebook person, and I happen to like to play Scrabble too, which I'm gonna whip his butt too. Gonna challenge him. We gonna go at it another way.
What? I think we need to get that on air, get that on tape, just film it. Okay.
Yeah.
We gonna go at it another way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna win. I love to play Scrabble too. That's one of the things I do, and I happen to be out there, and I'm like, no, this ain't Elmo, And it was shocking. I don't really know whether I reached out to him, he reached out to me. Whatever, it's God. It's God. God somehow, he got us both on the same track, same path, a common thing we both like to do. And it got us there, man. And that got us here today.
When I think about unintended consequences, and we were talking a little bit in a conversation not too long ago, I think about the roots being in fatherlessness. And I know that, we all have our stories or our own neighborhoods that we grew up in. There's something from a general standpoint that I think about that's a problem still in our communities and our neighborhoods. It's a lack of fathers. And that doesn't mean that even fathers who are present are actually present, because you can be in the house and not be an effective father. And so when I think about the roots of fatherlessness, one of the things that I know is something that's being taught from generation to generation, at least from my grandfather before him, and even on to my dad, and I'm yet 42 years old, is that a man or a father is the provider. He's tough. There's no expressing yourself of emotions. There's no time spending time with your children because all of your time is really dedicated towards work.
Right.
And so when I say that I love you, I just point to the lights, and that's your indicator that I love you. I say that I love you when I point to the refrigerator, and you got food to eat. I don't have to coddle you. And in some instances, that's not our culture, so to speak. And it shouldn't even be a culture. I say that, but it is culturally something that you don't see done. Hugging your son, showing emotion, crying, all of that stuff. You were a punk, you were a sissy, you were soft. You don't do that. If you fell and scraped your knee, boy, you better get up and you better not cry. Those were the types of things that at least I saw growing up culturally, from a standpoint of not just my household, but outside of my household, where that wasn't going on, hugs and things of that. How much of the roots of fatherlessness do you think played out in the unintended consequences in your life?
Tremendous amount of pressure was put on me because of not having the right kind of man, the right father. You said that the father can be present, but not be a present, not be a gift to his family. The father is also the priest of the house. He's and that weighs out more than leadership. The father should be the spiritual guide in that house, as long as providing those physical needs that we all have. The housing, the shelter, the clothing. But he's also that spiritual part of that household, that connection with God. That is something that's destroying our families. Even if the man is there, he's not operating in his role as priesthood. It's the priest. In my life, I realized that I look for a certain type of father. And when every father that I ran into was exactly as you described. Uncaring, unloving, unemotional. And so when someone would encourage me, it was always the wrong type of person. It was always the drug dealer. It was always the armed robber. It was always the people that I was in consistent contact with, which is very important, because I went to the boys club and I was a Boy Scout, but I only went to those places one day a week. So for the 6 days, I got a chance to see the people that I began to idolize, which were those that were in the neighborhood, destroying the neighborhood. And I thought that because of what they were doing to the community was benefiting the community, when I actually found out that we were a part of the total destruction of our community. And that's something that I've never really thought about until I got a little older. So without a father being present and being a gift to his family, you can always really believe that person is going to grow up incomplete. That doesn't lead to death, the graveyard, the institution, but that person, when that person gets involved in relationships and interact with other people, they're not whole.
I agree. Willie, what's your reaction to what Elmo just said?
Wow, kind of shocking. The story he told me about our mutual friend, Angela, it's just amazing how that thing came into a full circle, That, like, once again, you see God in that. It's just amazing. But some of the things he's telling me, I didn't know. I didn't know all these years, I didn't know. But my answer to that fatherlessness, I grew up, even though you hear a story about my father, but see, my father grew up he was in the same town I was, but he didn't grow up in the same household. And my father was, as far as being a father, he was absent in my life. Like back in my days, my dad said many times, child support, but anyway, it was $10 a week that he paid. He paid that now. He paid it, but it's just so many things about that I could tell you. See, my mom drank bad back in the day, so my grandmother raised me and my sister. I didn't have any brothers. And I love my dad. I loved him. I feared him. He never whooped me, but I feared him, and but I loved him too. But it was just he wasn't there. He never was there. We never had to sit down and talk, like this. He loved fishing. Now, when I was small, yes, he took me fishing with him. And as I got older, and I'm gonna keep it real, I love him, but over the years I found a lot of hurt because even when he went fishing, I found out more late in life he needed somebody to go with him. He didn't want to go by himself. So
yes,
it's just a lot of things. My father wasn't there. He just wasn't there. I never had my father come to the school ever in my life. So education is a big role to all this,
Yes.
And he never was there. He couldn't tell you anything I did in school, out of school, never attended there once, never came to one PTA meeting, any of that. So
how did you process that in your teen life?
Well, I used to praise my father because by him not living in the household, my grandmother and my mom was there. That's who raised me. So they didn't have the luxury of, and it was quite a few of us. It was like 11 of us in one 2-bedroom apartment. So
yes,
so it was survival. And when I would see my father in the street, I see him somewhere. If he gave me a couple of dollars, I used to praise him. When I was smaller, I didn't realize until I got older. As I got older, as I learned more about life,
yes,
I started feeling some resentment against him a lot because just not being there, I don't know what, it's just not being there, But unlike a lot of people, as I got kids early in life. I think my first kid, I was 16 when I got my first son. And I've always been there for them, even to the day. And I've always tried not to ever be absent in their life. You see what I'm saying?
yes.
I want to do totally opposite what my dad did. By him not being there, the streets taught me. I hung around like Elmo. I hung around a lot of older guys. So
yes,
they became my father. They the one teach me about life, teach me about this. I got involved with the drugs. I thought I was a pretty good guy coming up. I wasn't that really bad. But you get caught up in the environment. You got to remember, this during the 80s in Fort Lauderdale.
Yes.
You remember, this was in the drug capital. This was the drug capital of the world.
Yes.
At the time, so you got caught. You become part of your environment. No matter how much you. So that's who taught me. As a kid, I used to, as a kid, I don't know if people know about the Triangle Bar, the embassy. I got paid as a kid to hold the belt while I was right there holding the belt while they would shoot up. I witnessed all this as a kid many times.
And when you say kid, how young were you?
Oh, I was about 9, 10.
Wow.
I saw all that. I saw people OD. I've right there, like I said, but believe it or not, I hear a lot of these stories. I never had a person ever say, try this. They would always say, you better not ever let me catch you doing this and blah, blah. So a lot of the stuff that you hear in the hood, even though people was doing bad things, they never encouraged me to do that. They've always told me, if I catch you doing this, I'm a blah, 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 And so, but you learn. That's who become your father, the streets, people. And now there's some bad habits out there, that people, you get caught up in doing it. And unfortunately, selling drugs was one of the ones that fascinated me. I made my own money. And I have no father. My grandmother struggled, to put food on the table. So that was a way out, drugs. That was and I think if my father was, there, I may have taken another route.
Yes.
I may have taken another route.
Want to remind everyone that this is the Death or Prison podcast brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. Go to the podcast button so that you can be connected with a welcoming, mentoring church in your local neighborhood.
Here's something that I think that we have to kind of shed light on now. Even though we've had these experiences of not raising our own kids and not having the proper fathers in our house, that doesn't stop us from mentoring. That doesn't stop us from stepping into somebody else's life and encouraging them and building them up. And it's going to require the changing of our minds, the way that we even view our own kids, our attitude towards our own community. Everyone can always say, if you put this child in this environment, and by the time they're 10 to 15 years old, you can definitely know that they're going to end up on a road of destruction. Everyone knows that. So what we're doing with Death or Prison is trying to prevent these kids, our kids, from going. While I was doing all this time in those both stints in incarceration, somebody else was raising my child. I'm so thankful for that. You know, my daughter's in the Navy right now, and she's serving this country, and she's turned out to be a beautiful person, and she's allowed me, even in my absence, to share in a part of her life. So, in the response to that, now I mentor kids. I talk to kids. I go to PTA meetings. Before COVID came, I felt so good walking in and talking to the principal about one of the young men that I was mentoring who had told his counselor that he wanted to kill himself. I had a chance to come in and stand in the gap. One of the young ladies I was mentoring, her mother called me and said, "Hey, my daughter's in the hospital." So now I had a chance to fix something. I couldn't be there when my daughter was in the hospital, but I had a chance to be there when this young lady was in the hospital, and I know that it speeded up the healing process. Because now I look at the things that I've done, and I'm trying to see where I can be a blessing in somebody else's life, and so that they don't have the experiences that we've had. And I want to encourage you guys and also our listeners, this is what must be done. It's not a sacrifice. It's not an investment. It's your duty to want better for the people that are around you.
Everyone needs a mentor. There's no age limit on that either. If I had someone come alongside who could explain to me some unintended consequences back to the 22-year-old me and told me about the boatload of time that I was facing, the prison conditions and all of the things that come behind it, not being able to get a good job, not being able to live in this neighborhood, I would have appreciated and listened. I would have reconsidered. I would have.
And I want to make sure that our listeners understand that there are people out there reaching out. There are groups of people. There were people in my life that were reaching out to me and telling me, you can be better than what you're doing. You can do better with the experience and skills that you have at a young age. You can do better than what you're doing.
Yes.
But I really needed someone to kind of put me back on track and help me navigate through pain. That's all I was a young man that was hurt, and I wanted to hurt somebody else. I needed a pain reliever. I believe that if I would have had that particular type of person in my life to sit back and say, listen, don't go down this road. You're going to end up destroying lives. You think about what you're doing, these unintended consequences, this ripple effect, and you watch how many people you affect. We never talk about the money that's involved when we go to jail. about these court costs and all this. You got to pay lawyers and the police officers, and you got to pay all. You never think about any of the things. You never think about. I have 3 batteries on police officers. I never thought about. Well, this man got to go home because I hit him in the eye, and his eye swollen. His kids there and his wife there, and what did he go and say? Well, just a hard day at work while he's trying to protect and serve the community. You never think about those same people that are protecting and serving the community while you're in prison and they're taking care of your family because of your immaturity. You're still at a baby stage and you're an older guy and someone's still taking care of you. Everything that we do, it has an effect on everybody that we're around, even the people that we cannot see.
And so all of those things are the ripple effect, unintended consequences that I'm praying that someone that's listening really, really listens. You can hear something. We hear something makes a sound. We all know that it makes a sound. But when you listen is when what you're hearing changes your behavior. And so we're hoping that if something that you're listening to helps change your behavior, and not just the person that may be perpetrating or may be into some trouble or things of that nature, you're in the neighborhood with someone that you know is not going down the right road. Like what you were saying, Elmo, this is everybody's responsibility. We all have a responsibility to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.
Before we go, I want to just give my big brother a hug before we go.
All right, love you, man.
Looking for a welcoming church? Connect at leanonmeusa.org. Be sure and join us next time when Freddie Morales talks about how his fight for survival turned into a life of crime. Death or Prison is a production of leanonmeusa.org. Copyright 2020. Death or Prison is offered for information only and is not intended as legal advice. Thank you for listening.
I can change the world. Feed one, teach one boy